Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, it's been a while since I talked about Marvel. A really long time, actually. And some of my first popular videos, at least popular from my perspective anyway, were about Marvel. And I wanted to cover them for the past few months, but I didn't really have anything concrete I wanted to say. But with the really recent trailer of Fantastic Four First Steps, I just been thinking I finally got to cover the Fantastic Four because I recently stopped reading it because I start from the very beginning. I was reading it. I was gonna read it all the way up to the end of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but I decided to just give up toward the end of the run. It's not so good toward the end of the run. Just got me thinking that nobody really knows, at least general public doesn't really know much about the Fantastic Four. There are all these people who say they do, but I don't think they get it. Like, I'm not trying to sound condescending or anything. It's just that I don't think people really understand the Fantastic Four because they don't really know anything about the FF. And considering how much I love this comic, I'm thinking I gotta talk about them. So with Marvel's first family, without further ado, let's dive on into the world's greatest comic magazine. So, to talk about the Fantastic Four, I must first talk about their creators, Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby. If you don't know what those names are, you gotta read more 60s Marvel comics, guys. Tangent on 60s Marvel, I guess, it's coming soon, but to start, it's that. So, Stan Lee had been working for Marvel, or actually it was called Timely Comics, since 1939. They changed it to Atlas Comics in 1950 and then to Marvel in 1959. And despite working there for so long, he said he always considered comics to be a temporary business. He never actually liked comics. He said that when he was a kid, he never read Superman and Batman. He read stuff like Mark Twain. As he got older, Charles Dickens. He didn't read those comics. He thought they were lame. And as he got older, having to make them, he thought, yeah, these are bad. And he was about 1960, 1961, he was finally gonna quit. But his wife told him, Stan, if you're gonna quit, why don't you make at least one comic that you would want to read? And as luck would have it, the publisher of Marvel, Martin Goodman, who had been there since Stan started and didn't leave until the early 70s, he said, hey, there's this new comic called Justice League. It's really popular, and it's about his team of superheroes. I want you to make a superhero team. And that's how he came up with the Fantastic Four. Also had a lot of input from Jack Kirby. Well, how much input Jack Kirby had is debatable, but basically the two of them came together and created the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four were very different from your superheroes of the time. The Fantastic Four created what we know of superheroes as today. For example, they had real personal struggles. That's how Marvel got famous. As I'll mention later on in the video, Bruce Wayne never had to worry about not being able to pay his rent or, I don't know, getting evicted from his mansion or whatever. Clark Kent never had to worry about how other people thought of him. He never had a ton of social problems, just none of that stuff. None of those comics were necessarily bad, it's just that they weren't really trying to connect with anyone on a deeper level. They were just, here is your fun superhero comic. Now bye. That's all they were. And while Marvel did have plenty of secret identities, Fantastic Four, their first superheroes, didn't have secret identities. Why? Because Stan Lee said if he had superpowers, he's too much of a show-off. He wouldn't keep his identity a secret, and he wanted to make the Fantastic Four stand out. That's also why in their first two issues, they don't have costumes. The only reason he even gave them costumes is because he got a bunch of letters saying, it's great, I love it, but if you don't give them costumes, I'll never buy another issue. That's really what happened. So he said, okay, I guess we gotta give them costumes. And so Stan and Jack were just, these guys created the Fantastic Four. Also, they made the Fantastic Four the first comic to actually credit the people who worked on the comic. So before, the most credit a comic book would get for the people who made it was just something like Batman by Bob Kane. It's just by Bob Kane. So the first few issues of the Fantastic Four say, by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Eventually they say, writer, Stan Lee. Artist, Jack Kirby. Inker, Dick Ayers. Letterer, some guy named Sam Rosen, I think. For those of you who get that line, you get it. And the reason I call them Stan the Man and Jack King Kirby is because Stan Lee said he wanted people to actually look at the credits to see who made it. So what'd he do? all 60s Marvel comics, they always had some kind of joke name for the writers and artists. So you'd see something like Smilin' Stan Lee, John Ring-a-Ding Ramita, Sizzlin' Steve Ditko, or in Sergeant Fury and His Howling Commands, which is a war comic, you'd say written by ex-Sergeant Stan Lee, drawn by ex-Corporal Dick Ayers, inked by ex-Private John Tartaglione, lettered by civilian taxpayer Artie Simek. Okay, but enough background. Now it's time to actually dive into the Fantastic Four itself. The first two issues of Fantastic Four are pretty simple, but they're still worth talking about because at the end of the day, they are still pretty good. For one, as I mentioned before, that yeah, the FF were just in their first two issues they didn't have costumes because Stan Lee wanted to make them more like regular people. And something about the first issue that I like to talk about is that so you know how you see a lot of superheroes, they bicker. That never happened for the few times they crossed over before the Fantastic Four. But once the Fantastic Four get their powers, you can see them arguing with each other. There's this brief bit, it only goes over in that first issue, that Ben seemed jealous of Reed and Sue. He'd say, "Ha, Sue, why do you care about that weakling Reed when I'm around?" You see them arguing about it. He rips, when he gains to super strength, he rips a tree off because he's so mad he's gonna hit Reed with it. Or how the Mole Man, who debuted in the first issue, was the first supervillain to have a sympathetic origin. Because other supervillains had origins, like Two-Face, but they never really try to make you think deeper about the supervillains. And yeah, the one is not a very complex character, and I appreciate they still tell you at the end of the day, this guy is the bad guy, but they still give a little more depth to him, which is that he says, why is a human being ruling the center of the earth? Well, he was born looking like a freak. He was deformed. And you get these panels of people saying stuff like, I know you're qualified to work here, but you can't. You scare the other employees away. Or some woman saying, me go out with you? Don't make me laugh. Or some other guy saying, hey, is that your face or you're wearing a mask? Ha ha. So he just runs away and says, even this exile is better than the coldness or whatever of my fellow men. And then he ends up getting trapped in the center of the earth like a human mole. It's little stuff like that. It may not seem like much now, but at the time it was revolutionary. It had never been done before. Second issue has the Fantastic Four, face off against the Skrulls. Alien shapeshifters. We all know the Skrulls. Can I just say that? Well, I don't really want to. You need to read the Fantastic Four. So I am going to get into a lot of spoilers, though. So I'm just going to say this, that the ending of issue 2 is hysterical. After the Fantastic Four have defeated the Skrulls, they say they can, I don't know, send the Skrulls back to their superiors who will be super disappointed in them and probably lock them up. And they say, or I think they're worried the FF might actually kill them. So they're saying, no, we'd do anything to live a life of peace. So what does Reed have them do? Early in the issue, I think hypnosis was established. So Reed has all the Skrulls in this issue shapeshift into cows and hypnotizes them into thinking they are cows. I'm not kidding. That's what happens, and it is great. Also, if you want to know which issue of Fantastic Four you should read, I'd recommend just starting from the beginning and reading all the way to the 1968 annual. So annual, I think that's the 6th annual. After that, well, you could read on further. I'd recommend that's probably a good place to stop. And yeah, you have to read the annual. So, yeah, the beginning of the Fantastic Four, despite these first two issues being pretty simple, they are still fun. As I said before, stuff with the Mole Man, you get some good character dynamics. Like, I just like the way the characters act. The Fantastic Four is such a great group dynamic. It's just really fun. But as I said before, they got a lot of letters saying that if you don't give them costumes, we'll never buy it again. So they were given costumes. That's not all about what happened for the next few issues, though, because now we've talked about the comic setting its standard, and also that you can see that these early issues say The Fantastic Four, but starting with issue 3, not only do they have costumes now, it also says the greatest comic magazine in the world on it. And for the rest of the series, for hundreds of issues, I'm not kidding, on the top of it, it says the world's greatest comic magazine, which I think is where they got the world's most way past cool comic for Archie Sonic. Probably. A lot of people who worked on early Archie they did a lot of 60s Marvel references because they grew up on this stuff. But so this is where the comic really sets the standard. But I also want to talk about something very brief that deserves its own video, really, which is the letters pages in these old Marvel comics. Because Stan Lee said that in there's this good book from the early 70s, so it's probably pretty obscure. Origins of Marvel Comics. I'll be talking about some of the stuff in there, maybe. So Stan Lee, it was a book written by Stan Lee with a bunch of introductions to about different Marvel characters. Had a copy of their origin issue and a random issue from later in their run. And he said that before the FF, you got a few letters a year, and it was just stuff like, my copy of Kid Colt Outlaw is missing a staple. I want my money back. He said hardly what you'd call a flood of fan mail. But with the Fantastic Four and all the other Marvel characters, they started getting tons of letters. I am not exaggerating when I say they literally got hundreds of letters a day, probably over 1,000 all in all. And they had to read all of these, and they had to pick out which few would be printed in each magazine each month. I don't know how they did it, but they did. But talk about the actual issues themselves. So yeah, issue 3 is just a really fun issue. So yeah, the FF finally get their costumes. They get the Fantastic car. We get some great stuff like, so the FF have their regular old costumes that go over their body, but the Thing only has shorts. Sue designs a big suit of armor for Ben, and he says he hates it, and it falls off anyway, just breaks off, and that's where he wears only shorts. He actually has boots on the cover of issue 4, though. I'm not sure why, but yeah. So, or issue 3 is about the Fantastic Four versus the Miracle Man. This guy who seems to be able to do anything until at the end they expose that he can't really do anything. He was just a master hypnotist and illusionist. Yeah, he made it seem like he could do all sorts of things when he really couldn't. It's a simple story, but a fun story. But the end of the issue has it's the pretty tired, funny trope of one of the members saying, "I must quit the Fantastic Four," and that leads into issue 4, where we get just such a good issue. As you can see, the cover, it features the coming of the Submariner. And if you only see in the MCU, to you, the Submariner is just some loser villain named Namor from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, who has basically nothing to do with the Submariner, by the way. He looks nothing like him. That's what he's supposed to look like, but he's also named Namor, not Namor. But the Submariner is from 1939. I think he actually is the oldest Marvel hero. And so the issue 4 begins with Johnny. He's run away from the FF. He's fallen into this dirty part of New York City. He goes into this, I guess, not a homeless shelter, but just a place where a bunch of random down their luck guys go. And he's reading the story about, wow, the Submariner. I remember Sue telling me about this. They said he could defeat 10 men easily, although it's been years since anyone's seen him. And as luck would have it, there's this tough guy with a beard who living in this place, and the fellow guys tell Johnny, this guy here with the beard, he could beat up anyone easily. And he says, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to fight anyone anymore. And he says, I've been lost in this place for so many years. I can't remember who I am. And Johnny decides, well, this guy doesn't want to fight anyone. He just wants to remember who he is. First of all, let's give him a shave to see who he is. We get this iconic scene that, God, look, you should look it up. John uses his fire powers to burn off his beard. He realizes, oh my gosh, you're the Submariner! It doesn't sound the best when you're describing it, but to actually read the moment, it's great. It just has this feeling of excitement to it. And you have the issue, Submariner wants revenge on mankind, and all that, and he releases this big monster from the bottom of the ocean to attack New York City, and it's a really good issue. Issue 5 is the debut of Doctor Doom, whose mask is green on the cover for some reason. This issue isn't exactly Doctor Doom at his best, but he's still got a good taste of what makes Doctor Doom Doctor Doom. Like, he captures Sue and has the other members of the FF travel back in time to get the treasure of Blackbeard. Because, as he knows, and they do once they find it, that the treasure of Blackbeard is magic. What's also a really good thing in this issue, okay, 2 things I want to talk about. 1, the FF realizes they're disguising themselves as pirates to fit in with the time period that Ben is Blackbeard. It sounds really stupid, but I like it. It's memorable were also in this issue. So the Hulk was coming out around this time, and despite all these Marvel characters existing in the same universe, that wasn't quite a thing just yet. So you've got, as an ad, Johnny reading the first issue of the Hulk, and he says, "Hey Ben, this monster in this comic looks just like you." Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this sounds fine and all, it's decent, but okay, what really makes this so great? As I said before, it's better to read this stuff than to talk about it. You actually just have to read it yourself to really get it, but these early issues just are really fun. But now it's time to get into what really made the Fantastic Four different. We get to issue 9 with another famous cover, the end of the Fantastic Four. Because as I said before, Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne never had to worry about paying the rent, but the Fantastic Four do. Because at the end of the day, these are just regular people. They have to pay the bills like anyone. They don't own the Baxter Building. They just rent the top few floors. So the issue begins with, the FF just have no money. They're broke, and they're trying to dodge bill collectors. And it's said because Ben gets mad at Reed. He says that with all the money you got from patenting your inventions, we would have had enough for years. But after you invest, and Reed says, I know, but after I invested them in all, I didn't expect those stocks I invested everything into to go down so much. Is it kind of dumb for Reed who invested all his money into stock, every single cent he has into those stocks? Sure, but the point is, it feels realistic. The Fantastic Four have to worry about the bills just like anyone else. And they're seriously wondering what they should do. They're thinking, maybe their powers could be used for the circus or something. And Ben says, yeah, or maybe we could even turn to crime or something to that effect. And Reed says, we're not selling you out to freak shows and we're not becoming criminals. But they get a letter from SM Studios in Hollywood saying they want to make a Fantastic Four movie. And SM turned out to mean Submariner Studios. He says that with all the treasure he has from the bottom of the ocean, he was able to sell it for money, and with nothing else to do, he created his own film studio and became a producer. It was really just a trap so he could, with the Fantastic Four filming their action scenes, they're actually fighting real robots and monsters that he wants to use to kill them. But at the end, after a series of circumstances, he just says, okay, fine, you win, but I'll still make your movie. And they end up making their movie, it's a big hit, and they get their money. This issue is just great. Again, it sounds kind of cheesy. And by today's standards, you're thinking, okay, they have to pay bills. Lots of superheroes have realistic problems like that. But again, at the time, it was never done before, and even now, it still holds up really well. That was also the first issue to credit, the inker and letter or two. Issue 10. This one is different for not that it's trying to do things realistically, but rather for it's doing something so crazy no one would ever think of it, and it's amazing. So, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Marvel Comics as a whole just exist in the Marvel Universe. But wait, they're not breaking the fourth wall. What they do is actually pretty clever. So, the FF... excuse me. Okay, yeah. So, the FF tells Stan and Jack their adventures, and they make them into comic books. And this is actually a real consistent piece of Marvel Comics continuity. This is a thing in the Marvel Transformers comics in the 80s. They actually kept this for a really long time. So what happens is that in the previous issue, Doctor Doom was lost in space or something. And you see Stan and Jack, you never see their faces, in the Marvel Comics office trying to come up with a new idea for an issue. And they're saying, how about this guy? We'll call him Falseface. Not bad, but too bad Doctor Doom was lost in space and was never a villain as good as him. And then he appears out of nowhere, and he explains that later in the issue that when he was lost in space, he was rescued by these aliens. He was able to manipulate them using their technology to get himself back to Earth. And he learned how to switch bodies. So he switches bodies with Reed Richards. That's why you can see the Reed with this mean expression on his face on the cover. And you got the Stan and Jack on the cover saying, how's this for a twist, Jack? We've got Doctor Doom as one of the Fantastic Four. And Mr. Fantastic himself is the villain. Our fans ought to flip over this yarn. Just love that. I love that 60s dialogue. Issue 11, another great one. So, Yeah, the B story of this is this story about the FF fighting the Impossible Man, who's crazy and does all sorts of wacky things. It's pretty fun, but the first story is actually really good and really interesting. A Day with the Fantastic Four. So, as I mentioned before in the previous issue, Marvel Comics does exist in in the Marvel universe without breaking the fourth wall. And the FF are celebrities, so they get lots of fan letters. So the issue has the Fantastic Four respond to letters in universe that are also questions people in real life would have had about the Fantastic Four. That's some really clever stuff. Gotta give credit to the House of Ideas where credit's due. You get things like so this the Marvel started in the 60s, so back then you could say, yeah, Reed and Ben fought in World War II. That was just a thing. You get it, hear about their history together, because they mention that they have a history, and it's continued throughout the rest of the comic. They're really good friends. Yeah, they fought in the war together. They were college roommates. Stuff like that. It's good stuff. It gives you a greater insight into these characters. And it's just something no comic would ever have done before. Even now they wouldn't do something like this because it's so offbeat, as they would say. Marvel's peak, baby. This is when the Fantastic Four was just in its golden age. Marvel as a whole. Because what I would like to refer to as around 1962 to 1968 is the Marvel Age of Comics. That was something that Marvel put on some of their covers saying, in this new Marvel Age of Comics. But the thing is, that wasn't just a marketing stunt. That was true. For one, okay, why do I pick 1962? That's when Hulk, Thor, and Spider-Man were introduced, so they got a lot more superheroes that year. And 1968 is when they were at the peak of their popularity, and that's the last year before they started going downhill. But yeah, you gotta understand just how big Marvel was back then. Stan Lee was asked to give so many college lectures. People who worked at Marvel were interviewed with popular radio hosts. Popular radio hosts did readings of Marvel comics that probably over 1 million people across America heard. You'd see letters, and the letters pages aren't just from America. You see some from Canada, okay, Australia. You'd see some from a lot from soldiers who were fighting in Vietnam or just on other army bases throughout the world. You'd see some letters from England, from other countries too. Marvel was everywhere. You get a ton of merchandising deals were already going on. Marvel was on TV. Marvel was everywhere. It really was the Marvel Age of Comics. Not to mention the fact that all their competitors tried to copy them. I'm not exaggerating when I say that DC would look at Marvel and say, they'd have all their editors gather in a meeting and they'd say, why is Marvel selling so well? All their covers this month had red on them. So let's put red on all our covers. And then the publisher of Marvel saw that, and as a joke, he got rid of the red from the covers for the next month. And they said, guys, Marvel had speech bubbles in their covers this month. Let's put speech bubbles in our covers. And then, yeah, next month, Marvel got rid of the speech bubbles from their covers just to mess with them. But how about these stories? Well, let's start with probably my favorite annual, Fantastic Four Annual 2, The Final Victory of Doctor Doom. So this is when you get the origin of Doctor Doom, and this is back in the 60s, when villains could have good origins but didn't need to be needlessly complex and stupid, like today. What did they do, Doctor Doom's origin in the modern day? Like, they did something about him trying to rescue his mother from hell, or I don't know. But his original origin is simple. His father was a gypsy, and his father got killed from some people or something, and his last words were, you need to, protect the world and Doctor Doom as a kid was thinking, my father wants me to protect the world from the people who did this to him. I need to stop them at all costs. What his father was really saying though was, you need to protect the world from my son, because if he finds out things about his mother, and if he tries to avenge me, he'll go completely crazy, because what he find out? His mother was a witch. So Doctor Doom uses his mother's notes, his father's notes, because he was a gypsy, to create all sorts of formulas and all that, his armor, to rule people. He ended up becoming the dictator of his own country, Latveria. He went to college in New York City with Reed Richards, where he was an arrogant jerk to him, and then he ended up doing this experiment by himself that permanently disfigured his face, and as such he has to wear a mask. So yeah, the first story is the origin of Doctor Doom. The second story, on the other hand, is the FF get invited to the nation of Latveria. They don't know Doctor Doom is the ruler of it, though. and uses it as a trap to catch all the FF one by one and have them defeated. And the final battle, though, is Doctor Doom versus Reed Richards. He uses this machine that will test their mental willpower or something like that. Whoever has a stronger mind will win. Whoever loses will be sent to limbo. And Doctor Doom thinks he's finally won. He's had his final victory. Get the title? He's finally defeated the Fantastic Four, but in reality, Reed Richards won, and he messed with the machine to make Doctor Doom hallucinate his victory. Great stuff. And yeah, there are so many issues throughout this time. If I want to talk about every single issue, we'd be here forever. So, and this video is already going on for a little longer than I wanted it to at this point, so we're going to have to speed through things here. In Fantastic Four 39, a blind man shall lead them. So after a while, Doctor Doom gains insight into what really happened. That FF beat him, and in the end of the previous issue, the Fantastic Four lost their powers. Now in this issue, the powerless Fantastic Four, led by Daredevil, trying to escape Doctor Doom. Issue 40, the Battle of the Baxter Building. Can't entirely remember what happens in these issues, but it's so good. Well, one, it's interesting to see the FF work together with Daredevil. That was cool. It's just, again, it has this air of excitement. Look at these covers. Aren't they so cool? Modern comic covers just don't have the same kind of impact that these did. Like that image of Doctor Doom standing above New York City with the FF and Daredevil. Is that Wyatt Wingfoot, I think it is, on the bottom. Well, that's not him. That's someone else. I'm not sure who actually. Yeah. It has this great excitement to it. Some other issues too. The 3-part epic, The Coming of Galactus. I wish I could imagine what it was like for people reading Marvel back in the 60s, because they didn't know who Galactus was. But this not all-powerful, this really powerful being called the Watcher, who he's showed up a few times before, who says he's supposed to never intervene, and he has intervened multiple times, but he says that to the Fantastic Four, you seriously need to be worried. Galactus is coming, and he will consume your world. And Galactus finally makes his appearance at the end of issue 48, great design, but now it's time for me to talk about a very weird habit of Jack Kirby's. So, Galactus is this ancient alien. Why does he have a giant G on his chest? Jack Kirby also drew Thor. He put a T on Thor's belt. He put an S on the Submariner's belt. He's probably the reason Captain America has an A on his mask. Okay, I like that, but why was he so obsessed with putting letters on all these characters' costumes? It's just so ridiculous. But anyway, Galactus comes to consume Earth in the issue If This Be Doomsday. The stakes were never higher. Considering how this is around the time Joe Sinnott became the inker for Fantastic Four, he took the artwork to a whole nother level. The story here just truly feels epic. Concludes in issue 50, the startling saga of the Silver Surfer, who apparently is going to be a woman in the new movie. Yippee. You also get the Human Torch in college at last. That was a fun story. So, I don't know if I'm properly articulating what makes these comics so good, but bear with me. Because now, we get some more great stuff from Marvel's Peak. Issue 51, This Man, This Monster. So, this is the previous issue. You see this just random-looking guy. We don't hear his name or anything. He just says, I will be the one to finally defeat the Fantastic Four. In this issue, you once again see him. You don't hear his name. You just see him saying how much he hates Reed Richards, and he tricks the Thing into coming into his house, and then he swaps minds with him or something. So he takes the Thing's strength, so he looks like the Thing and sounds like him, but the Thing turns back into just regular old human Ben Grimm. This issue also deals with a conflict that has persisted through pretty much the beginning of the comic for years to come, which is that the Thing feels like a monster because he can't revert back to being a human, or he can't switch between being a rock guy and being a human. He hates being the Thing. He feels miserable, which you get some interesting drama out of that with the fact that his girlfriend is blind. She can't see what he looks like, but she's able to feel him and just says and knows what he's done and says, "You are a strong, brave man who does the right thing." In this issue, though, as this unnamed villain is trying to take the Thing's place, trying to finally get his revenge on Reed Richards. Why is he trying to get revenge on Reed Richards? I don't know. But the fact that it doesn't say just makes it even more interesting, because Reed is going into the negative zone. He says, Ben, I trust you with my life. You have been my lifelong friend. I trust you to get me out of there when I say I need to get out. But the thing is, this unnamed villain is watching, he's just thinking, so this is Reed Richards. I'm not even worth his pinky. Which brings me to the topic of, I really hate it when I see these modern YouTubers covering these modern Marvel comics and saying how, what's so interesting about Reed Richards that he's actually pretty close to being a villain himself, which, that's not Reed Richards. He's not perfect, but this issue illustrates how Reed Richards is this brave, smart man who would do anything for his friends and his family, and is a heroic guy at the end of the day, and he will do whatever it takes to help people. He's not some kind of morally conflicted guy who might actually be a villain. He also doesn't have a beard. Why does he keep having to have a beard these days? But the unnamed villain lets Reed into the negative zone. He thinks, oh no, Sue says you need to save him. And he ends up doing it. And then but he says that we're gonna be. Reed says, well, you may have gotten in here to try to save me, but we can't get out of here. We are both going to die in here. But the guy says, maybe we don't have to die, and uses his powerful strength of the Thing and tosses Reed through all the way through the portal, and he's saved. And also throughout this issue, Ben Grimm showed up saying, "Come on, I'm Ben Grimm. You gotta believe me," and they don't believe him, but they do now. And Ben also turns back into the Thing, by the way. But Reed is able to say that it's so funny. The guy who was disguising himself as the Thing, Ben, we don't know who he was, where he's from, what his plans were, or anything. But he ended up paying the ultimate price like a man. He gave up his life to save the man he hated. What works that we don't know who he was, but that only makes it even more bittersweet, even more dramatic. This unnamed random guy who we never heard before, we'll never see again, ended up giving up his life to save someone. It's just really touching. I don't have anything else to say. Next issue is the debut of the Black Panther. Not much to say. It's a good issue. There's an issue where the Thing fights a Silver Surfer. That was pretty cool. He fights it because he thinks that the Silver Surfer is trying to muscle in on his girlfriend. Great issue, especially with the artwork. You've got to see the art for these issues, guys. The greatest Marvel story of all time. I'm not kidding when I say that. So, issue 57, enter Doctor Doom, undeniably the world's greatest arch-villain. Oh, this cover is just amazing, guys. All the covers throughout this four-part story are incredible. So yeah, Doctor Doom tricks the Silver Surfer into coming into his castle, where he's able to use this machine to steal his cosmic powers. And now Doctor Doom is basically one of the most powerful people in the universe. Issue 58, he attacks the Fantastic Four with his awesome might. He's able to do just about anything. There's no limit to this guy's power. There's this great part where he freezes the Thing like a statue. And you get this splash page of the Thing standing in the shadows like a statue. And these people saying, we were walking around this park, just earlier today, or maybe it was the day before. I could have sworn that statue wasn't there before. I wonder where it came from. It's really well made. He just defeats the Fantastic Four easily. And why doesn't he kill them? Well, Reed tricks him by saying that killing us would just be, or destroying us would just be too easy. And he says, you're right. I'd rather have you bask in your humiliation at the feet of my hands. Classic villain stuff. Issue 59, Doomsday. So yeah, this has to do with the Inhumans, who I'll get to later, believe me. The Inhumans break out, but also to show Doctor Doom's power, it just has him not casually fly around to a tropical island and make it snow infinitely there. Or he just releases wild animals in some place out of nowhere. He's basically invincible. The government of the world launched nukes at him, and it still does nothing. Then we get to the finale of this story, The Peril and the Power. Amazing cover, might I add. So, Ben just decides to fight Doctor Doom, and despite being cosmic power and standing no chance against the mad scientist. I guess he's a mad scientist, I don't know. Trying to sound like a narrator here. And Doom decides, I'm going to give you a chance by not using my full power. And Johnny shows up, trying to fight against him. The world is at stake. It's just so epic. But how is Doom defeated? Because remember, the FF just literally can't beat Doctor Doom no matter how hard they try. But throughout the issue, Reed is working on some kind of device. He hits Doom with the device, and he says, haha, your device did nothing. I don't even need the Earth anymore. I'm gonna fly into space and conquer the cosmos! And then, boom! He just disappears. Why did this happen? Well, he stole the power of the Silver Surfer. But Galactus exiled the Silver Surfer so that he could never go outside of Earth's atmosphere. Since he took the Silver Surfer's power, he also took that punishment with him. So he couldn't fly past Earth's atmosphere. And by trying to do that, not only did it send him flying to who knows where, it also removed his cosmic powers. And I'm just thinking after I read this, wow, what an amazing story. This also came out in 1966, Marvel's best year. The final issue of 1966, might I add. So I'm just thinking that, wow, the Fantastic Four peaked. Where could it possibly go from here? Well, the answer is downhill. Issue 61. The Sandman shows up, but he's not but he's not dressed like how he was in Spider-Man or early issues of the Fantastic Four, where he just has his classic green shirt. This is when Jack Kirby started to get a little more involved with the creative process. Because I'll talk about it later, but as Stan Lee got so busy writing so many comics, seriously, he was writing more than 10 at one point. He's also the editor of all of them. Even after he stopped writing them, he was still editing all of them. He did some stuff with merchandise. He went on talk shows to colleges. So Jack Kirby started being given the plots, being given the credits, or he wasn't credited, but in fact, this wasn't even known for many decades, but he was the one plotting the Fantastic Four for a while. So, he decided, hey, let's give the Sandman the ugliest costume we've ever seen. And you bet people complained about this. There was this letter that said, not only do I not like the Sandman's new costume, but you also ruined his character. Before, what made him interesting is that he wasn't like the Wizard or Doctor Doom or Doc Ock, where he was some super genius. He was just a punk with superpowers, but now he says, haha, Fantastic Four, the Wizard taught me science, and I was able to break through all your defenses and infiltrate the Baxter Building. It's just so stupid. Issue 62, Reed is lost in the Negative Zone and must be saved by one of the Inhumans. But at the end, this new evil villain shows up for the next issue. Blastar, the living bombers! He looks like one of those characters from Superman, I don't remember his name, but, Jack Kirby created those the characters like Darkseid and all that. Jack Kirby created those characters, so this looks like one of those characters. And Blastar is the embodiment of rock bottom. Well, actually, he is. So you have this incredibly lame villain teaming up with a ruined villain who has this hideous costume, and they just get unceremoniously defeated at the end of the issue. There's less dialogue than there used to be, because part of what I liked about this comic, and Stan Lee in general, is that his comics had a lot of words they actually took time to read, but they never cluttered up the artwork. Here, there just aren't that as many words, and the plot is just boring. And it's lame. Then there's the 5th annual that focuses on the Inhumans. Whoa! The Inhumans get way too much spotlight in this period. You've got the Inhumans fighting against, Psycho Man, who is just such a terrible villain. He's not even awful, it's just he is so lame. Who remembers Psycho Man? You've also got this bonus story about the Silver Surfer, but the reason that doesn't work is because the Silver Surfer is good as a supporting character, but he's not good as his own character. That's why his solo comic got canceled after 18 issues. He's just not that interesting to read a whole comic about. Speaking of the Silver Surfer, this era has, I am not kidding you, something like almost every issue, has a full splash page, which means a page that's just one picture, of the Silver Surfer standing in front of Kirby Crackle. Kirby Crackle is what those dots are called, by the way. You see them in some Marvel cartoons, you even see them in Ben 10. You know why they did that? Because Jack Kirby was plotting these, like I said before. And Jack Kirby's plots required much less words, and instead of a ton of pictures, a bunch of huge pictures. So he just put in so many splash pages to fill out this page time. And then you also got this 5-part Doctor Doom story, which probably could have been 2 or probably could have been 3 issues, where I am not kidding when I say that every single issue, some of them even have 2, has a full page of just Doctor Doom's face. Why? Again, they needed to fill page time. The first time it was a cool reveal, but by the third time it's just laughable. I'm not kidding when I tell you that my brother and I whenever we saw these, we just constantly laughed at them. Because it's hysterical almost to see just how much they were giving up. And again, the artwork is amazing because Joe Sinnott never stopped being the inker. So, and even the dialogue isn't that bad, it's just that the plot is so dull and trotting. And then you have to talk about the Inhumans. I said they got a lot of spotlight during this period, and I must say that the Inhumans just suck. I'm sorry. Their first story was actually plotted by Stan Lee, so the story was actually pretty good. But the thing is, the Inhumans scream Jack Kirby created these guys. And look, I don't want to sound mean to Jack Kirby because he was very important to Marvel and all that, but if you actually read the comics he wrote himself that are credited with Jack Kirby wrote these, or when he had to do his own inks and someone else wasn't inking them, the writing sucked, the artwork stunk. I don't want to offend him, that's just what happened. Most people will not read a Jack Kirby written comic and say, that was a story of quality. They will not look at most characters Jack Kirby created and say, I want to see more of that guy. The Inhumans were great for that first story they appeared in, and they were okay for some supporting roles, but they got way too much focus. I specifically want to talk about Karnak. Who is Karnak, you may ask? Karnak is the guy on the right, wearing green with the mask over his face. He has white sleeves. Karnak, excuse me for 1 second. So yeah, Karnak is the embodiment of rock bottom, much like Blastar was. With his amazing power, Karnak can sense the weakness in anything and strike at the weakness and destroy it. It might sound kinda cool, but when you actually have to read it, it's laughable. Most of the Inhumans are laughable, like Gorgon, who's all the way on the left. Gorgon has his huge feet, that have the power to destroy anything they stomp on. There's Triton, the fish-looking guy, who, is, sure there. The Inhumans just are so bad. Black Bolt is cool, but he can't speak, so once his initial story is over, he's just not interesting. Medusa's fine. Pretty good looking, though. Crystal is just there. She's there to be Johnny's girlfriend. She's there so that Johnny can mope about her. Oh no, Crystal! I can't be without you! I only saw you for a few minutes, but now I'm gonna die if I don't have you! That is Johnny's character for quite a few issues, unfortunately, even during the comic's peak. But I have to talk about the gems of this period. Fun fact, the Kree actually showed up in the Fantastic Four first. Their story gets wrapped up in Avengers, but there's this issue where the Sentry Sinister, who appears in an episode of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, is discovered by these 2 explorers, and the Fantastic Four just so happen to be vacationing on the island where the robot was discovered. And they fight against the robot, and I think this story was plotted by Stan Lee. I'm not just going to say that, oh, every issue that has a lot of words must have been plotted by Stan Lee, but that's what happened. It's impossible to deny. And yeah, I actually really like these issues. The second part is Ronan the Public Accuser. I should have just called him Ronan the Accuser. Shows up to wreak his vengeance on the Fantastic Four for destroying the Sentry. Really interesting, entertaining story with a lot of great artwork and good character dynamics. I really like this story. Also, I think issue 65 is the last time the Yancey Street Gang are ever mentioned in any meaningful way. If you don't know who they are, that's a shame. The Yancey Street Gang is a hilarious running gag. In the early issues, it just says that the Thing is always sent gifts, or I guess pranks, by this group called the Yancey Street Gang, who just hates his guts. Like, they send him a Beatles wig to make fun of him, or a picture of the Thing in a tutu that says, the Thing is a sissy. So in this issue, he says, I wonder if this box is ticking. I gotta see if it's a bomb the Yancey Street Gang sent me. Also, there's this great story that follows it called What Lurks Behind the Beehive. Alicia, the Thing's blind girlfriend, is mysteriously kidnapped in the background of the previous issues. And she finds out that she was kidnapped by these scientists who have thought to have been dead. Turns out they faked their own deaths because they've been plotting in the shadows. They've been trying to create life. But whatever kind of creature they created, they can't see. So they don't even know what it looks like. But Alicia, being blind and being a brilliant sculptor, is actually able to see it and is able to sculpt it. And she sculpts a cocoon. So issue 67 is wondering, oh my gosh, what is inside this cocoon? Who is him? Look, I don't care. The power of him is a cool title, okay? And then him turns out to be this guy that is golden and has superpowers, and he says, I'm above all of you guys, and he flies away. It's a great story. It might sound cheesy, but it really is really engaging to see what is going to come out of this cocoon. What is the true nature of these scientists? And there's also these issues I really like. So issue 78. Reed creates this potion he's been working on for years to finally cure the Thing. And guess what? He actually turns back into Ben Grimm. And he's so happy he can finally have his life back. But next issue of issue 79. So the Mad Thinker attacks this restaurant with one of his androids. And Alicia, the Thing's girlfriend I already mentioned before, is going to die. And the only way for her to be saved is if he turns back into the Thing. I can't remember exactly how he does it, but he was told that if you turn back into the Thing this time, you can never return to normal ever again. And he takes it. And the issue just ends with him. He's told, "But Ben, thank you, you saved my life." And he just walks away. Just sad that he may be happy he saved her life, but he's just gonna have to remain as this monster for the rest of his life. It's really compelling stuff. It once again drives home that kind of realistic drama Marvel was able to get out of these characters. Sure, no one's going to have to deal with the problem of being turned into a giant rock monster, but the idea that you're going to be stuck in something you hate forever is just sad. But I want to talk about what I consider to be the finale of the Fantastic Four. That is the 6th annual, which once again, I'm pretty sure Stan Lee plotted this because it actually has a ton of words and a lot of pictures. I mean, it's a double-sized issue, but still. So, Sue, who I barely mentioned because she's really boring, has been pregnant for a while, and it's her and Reed's baby. But the thing is, the doctor is saying that because of the cosmic rays in your blood, you and your baby might die in birth. So the Fantastic Four go into the negative zone for one final time, where they might be able to get something that can save Sue and the baby, where they encounter Annihilus, the last great new villain, I like to call him, from the Fantastic Four. This super-powered alien creature with this powerful wand that can control cosmic energy. They're thinking that, hey, if we get that wand from him, we can save Sue and the baby, and they are able to get it back. And they're able to save their lives as Reed and Sue's baby is finally born. And to me, that was a really nice ending for the Fantastic Four. But after that, which again, I just stopped reading around this time because it got so lame, this is the story that made me give up. When the Fantastic Four hit rock bottom, the Jack Kirby plots are in full swing, and here's how Jack Kirby worked. He may have been a good artist, but he wasn't a good plotter. Much like how Stan Lee was a great writer, but not a good artist. So Jack Kirby just copied whatever he saw on TV. There was an episode of Star Trek around this time where they traveled to an alien planet that looks and acts just like 30s gangster movies. So what happens? At first I was excited. Whoa, the Skrulls return to kidnap the Thing? What's gonna happen? They kidnap him, take him to this alien planet that looks and everyone talks just like they're from a 30s gangster movie. Why? Because these aliens sent drones to observe Earth years ago, and they just so happened to observe Earth in the 30s, and they really liked 30s gangsters, I guess, so everyone looks and acts just like a 30s gangster. And this story just has Ben get kidnapped to fight some robot called Torgo. It's so boring. I do not like this story. It's just the definition of rock bottom. Now I want to talk about the 1994 cartoon really quickly. My problem with this cartoon is that it could have been great. So it adapts a lot of stories from the best years of the comic, but they're very rushed. They actually did a good job condensing the cosmically powered Doctor Doom story into one episode, but stuff like the Black Panther story is just so rushed into one episode. Some episodes are either too rushed, but some are actually pretty well paced. The show doesn't actually have that many episodes, so despite me liking the theme songs, both theme songs, despite me liking the voice cast, fun fact, I actually got to meet the voice of Mr. Fantastic at TFCon last year, Bo Weaver. He was really nice. He was appreciated that I liked talking to him about how I liked how in this cartoon, Mr. Fantastic was characterized how he was in the 60s, so he's actually a nice, decent hero who isn't that far off from being a villain. But while I do have some fun with the show, it's also just there are a lot of episodes that just kind of drag, and well, I don't hate this show. It's a mixed bag. It had some really good stuff, but some really bad stuff. Now, I want to talk about the First Steps trailer. So, my first thought when seeing this image is, why does the Thing have a costume? You can say, so what? You're so nitpicky, you nerd. No, the Thing is not supposed to have a costume. He did it in the 90s, and it stunk. It was stupid. The Thing hates wearing a costume. Why do you give him this big full costume? It's just ugly. He also doesn't sound like the Thing either at all. Their costumes, while not bad, why do they always have to be blue and white in these adaptations? Why can't they just give them their classic costumes from the 60s that are blue and black? The only adaptations of Fantastic Four to give them their classic costumes was Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Pedro Pascal is Mr. Fantastic because he has to be in everything, and he doesn't really care about his characters, as it's been pretty obvious from previous interviews with him. So yeah, why does Mr. Fantastic have a beard? Because Pedro Pascal didn't want to shave. But these guys still look like the Fantastic Four, and I like the movie set in the 60s, which is a cool idea. I'm really glad they did that, but we also got stuff like, yeah, the Silver Surfer's gonna be a woman, and with the way the MCU's been going, it's just I have no faith in this movie. I wish this movie could be great, but it's probably gonna be really boring. That video is really long, but I just hope I got across to the few of you guys who stuck around why I love the Fantastic Four so much, and what truly makes the Fantastic Four the Fantastic Four. These exciting stories that had never been done before, that had a lot of great drama and artwork and all that. It's probably why I like Archie Sonic so much, which I actually read before this, so yeah. You guys should read this comic, it's great. That's all for now, and remember to stay way past cool.